All right, today we're going to take a really close look at the last 10 years of climate change, but we're zeroing in on just one place, Nevada County in California. We want to see what this big, global issue actually looks and feels like.
So what's causing this wild ride? What's the engine behind all this chaos? Well, to really get what's going on, we need to wrap our heads around a pretty important scientific idea, and that word is aridification.
Now, aridification, it's not just a fancy way of saying things are getting a little warmer. It's way more than that. It's a deep, long-term shift in the whole climate system. Yeah, the baseline gets hotter and drier for sure. Think less predictable and a whole lot more chaotic.
Okay, so what does that actually look like for the people in Nevada County? Well, first, you've got a consistent warming trend. Just everything is getting warmer. That leads to summers that are hotter and a lot more arid. But the winters are getting warmer too, and trust me, that has some massive consequences we're going to talk about in a minute. The drought cycles, they become way more intense. And here's the kicker. When they do get precipitation, more and more of it is falling as rain, not snow. Every single one of these things is a piece of a much bigger, much more volatile puzzle.
And when you put all those factors together, well, that brings us right back to that idea of climate whiplash. Let's actually look at the last decade, year by year, to see just how dramatic this is.
Okay, just look at this timeline. It's incredible. You're looking for a pattern, right? But there really isn't one. It's just chaos. You go from a severe drought in 2015 straight into an extremely wet year, another wet one. And then boom, you plummet right back into a 3-year severe drought. And just when you think that's the new normal, bam, 2023 is another extremely wet year. This right here, this is the perfect picture of that whiplash effect. It's just swinging violently from one extreme to the other, from way too little water to way too much.
But there's a really critical detail hidden inside those wet years, and it's something you might miss if you're not looking closely. It's all about the type of precipitation the county's getting. See, it's not just about how much water is falling from the sky, it's about how it's falling. So think about it like this. For centuries, the Sierra Nevada mountains have been like a giant natural water bank. You'd get this deep snowpack that builds up all winter, a frozen reservoir basically, and then it would melt nice and slow all summer, feeding the rivers and reservoirs. But now, those warmer winters mean more storms are dropping rain, not snow. And sometimes you get these rain-on-snow events that just melt everything way too fast. And that leads to this really dangerous thing called a snow drought. It means you can have a year with plenty of precipitation, but because it didn't fall as snow, you have no water saved up in the mountains for the dry season. And let me be clear, this is a huge deal. It's not just some bad news for skiers. When you lose that reliable snowpack, you're literally losing your main water savings account for the entire year. All that water just rushes downstream all at once in the winter and spring, instead of being stored up for when you desperately need it in the hot, dry summer. So this disappearing snowpack, it puts a major squeeze on the region's water supply. But the story is actually a bit more complicated than just, looking at a reservoir and seeing if it's full.
Yeah, you see, the big reservoirs, places like Spalding and Bowman, they can fill up pretty fast during one of those super wet winters. And that can give you this false sense of security, right? But the real story, the one that matters long-term, is happening underground. The groundwater that so many people rely on for their wells, that's like a giant, deep sponge. And those long droughts have just squeezed that sponge completely dry. A couple of wet years, it's just not enough to let that sponge soak back up. It takes a long, long time.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? You can look outside and see full reservoirs, maybe you just got hit by a massive blizzard, but underground, the system is still reeling from years of drought. That damage, it just lingers long after the surface looks like it's recovered.
And this incredible stress on the water supply, it doesn't just stop at our taps and wells. Oh no, it radiates outwards, into the landscape itself, turning the beautiful forests that define this entire region into, well, a tinderbox.
And how this happens is a truly devastating but simple chain reaction. First, you have the drought and the heat. This stresses out the trees. It weakens their immune systems, their natural defenses. So, second, bark beetles, which by the way, love the warmer weather, they move in and attack these weakened trees, killing them by the thousands. And finally, all of those dead, dry trees just stand there, becoming a massive stockpile of fuel for wildfires. We're talking about a huge amount of bone-dry wood just waiting for a spark. And the end result of that whole process? Well, it's what we've all been seeing in the headlines, year after year. The fire season is getting longer, starting earlier, ending later. And when fires do ignite, they burn hotter and spread faster than ever before, all because of that massive fuel load.
The risk of one of those truly catastrophic high-intensity wildfires, it just goes through the roof. So let's just pull this all together for a second. What are the big takeaways from looking at this? First, this idea of aridification, it's not some abstract thing that's going to happen in the future. It is happening right now. Second, the new climate reality is defined by this whiplash, these absolutely wild swings between extremes. And third, and maybe most importantly, this directly impacts two of the most critical things for life in the region, the reliability of the water supply and the risk of catastrophic fire.